Well, still to come. Well, you can see right now the US president touching down in Scotland there. He's, of course, on a 4-day trip to the UK, where he will meet with the UK Prime Minister to discuss trade. He'll also be opening a new golf course. So he is expected to draw quite a crowd there. We've already seen some pictures of hundreds of people gathering there to see his arrival there on the outskirts of Glasgow. President Trump on Air Force One. Unclear just how many supporters are turning up and how many protesters there will be, but we have seen certainly some interesting front pages of the newspapers there. I want to bring in our Jeff Zeleny, who is in the country covering the president's arrival and the trip. So talk to us about the president's agenda over the next 4 days, Jeff.
Well, look, this is President Trump's fifth international trip since taking office. The first, obviously, here in Scotland, his first return back since he returned back to power. And this is largely designed as a working vacation with a lot of golf on the side. But as these things often happened, a few more agenda items have been added along the way, including a meeting on Sunday with the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, as well as that meeting with British Prime Minister Keir Starmer on Monday. Obviously, trade and tariffs are front and center in that, as well as many other issues to talk about. But again, it is golf is the reason that President Trump is landing in Scotland, as we can see right now. And of course, he has a bit of family history here in Scotland. His mother was born here, and she emigrated to the United States at the age of 18 years old. The reason we're talking about that now is the golf course he'll be dedicating a new 18-hole golf course is named after his mother, and that's on the northern coast of the country. He'll be doing that early next week. So that is the purpose of the trip, but of course there are many other things on the agenda. But as is normal, this president plays golf on weekends, most every weekend actually since taking office. This is no exception.
And I'm wondering, Jeff, what sort of reception he's expected to get there, considering the front page of one of the newspapers there, the national newspaper. It read, "Convicted US felon to arrive in Scotland."
Look, I mean, that certainly sets the table and shares the view of what many in Scotland have toward the U.S. president. Protests are expected here in Edinburgh, as well as in some other cities tomorrow. We will see if they materialize and are as large as they were back in 2018 during his first visit. But while the president holds a fond view of Scotland, it is less clear if Scotland holds a fond view of the U.S. president. There have been many objections over the development of its golf courses here over the years, some promises that have never materialized in terms of development and building hotels and the like. Some of that just simply hasn't happened. There certainly is a view here, at least public opinion polls will show, that a broad majority of residents here dislike and disapprove of Donald Trump. But of course, he's coming here anyway, but he's not expected to be anywhere actually in public. He's going to do all of his meetings on his golf courses. Again, one at the Turnberry course on the western side of Scotland. And then on Monday, he'll be going up to his northern property as well. So he spends a lot of time on his golf courses. Again, this weekend is par for the course.
And of course, just before he took off, the French president said he would formally recognize a Palestinian statehood. The UK Prime Minister was also asked about that and said the UK would consider that too as part of a peace process deal. How could that potentially drive a deeper wedge with the US on this issue, given the US's stance?
That is a central question also hanging over that meeting with the British Prime Minister Keir Starmer on Monday. Certainly the U.S. President Donald Trump said before leaving Washington earlier today, he acknowledged rather bluntly that Hamas is not interested in seeking further steps in terms of a peace deal. But that deepening humanitarian crisis, shocking to the world, no doubt, it could drive a wedge between the U.S. and European leaders that are seeking to recognize a Palestinian state. So we will see how that develops here. There is no question that the Middle East and Gaza hangs over this as the images that we have seen of the starvation and things have been discussed by European leaders and others much more than they have been by President Trump.
Yeah, it certainly seems that the pressure is growing. We are hearing more and more from European leaders, especially when it comes to the delivery of aid, to allow more aid in light of the UNICEF report, the 54% increase in malnutrition-related child deaths since April. What sort of pressure do you think the UK Prime Minister may apply when he comes to those discussions on Monday with the US President?
Look, it's unclear what type of pressure he can apply, but I think, as one leader after another, obviously French President Emmanuel Macron beginning it, and then Prime Minister Starmer continuing it. I mean, it does become kind of a gathering storm, and President Trump in the U.S. Clearly are, need to do more. At least that is the view of many leaders around the world. And what is the role of the United States in this? I mean, certainly complicated by the United States' already tense relationships with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, but aid and a food delivery is something that is a deepening humanitarian crisis. There is no doubt. But again, President Trump has not focused on that nearly as much. We will see if British Prime Minister Starmer helps shine a brighter light on that during their Monday meeting.
Yeah, Air Force One just almost coming to a standstill there on the tarmac. On the outskirts of Glasgow there. I understand he's going to be meeting with the Scottish Secretary, and no doubt there are plenty of people there on the tarmac to see the president get off that plane. In terms of the trade discussions that Keir Starmer will have with Donald Trump on Monday, what's expected to come from those talks?
Well, look, the trade discussions between the UK and the US are largely worked out. At least a framework of the trade discussions are. Perhaps the bigger open question is the EU. The EU is facing yet another deadline in this on-again, off-again wave of tariffs that has really been one of the through lines of this administration. That August 1st deadline is something that the European Union is trying to work out a deal with the United States before that to avoid a blanket tariff rate of some 30%. So that is why a meeting on Sunday, which has just been added to the schedule, perhaps that is a bit more interesting. The UK trade deal has largely been agreed to in principle, but it is because of the warm relationship that the British Prime Minister has really tried to engender with the U.S. President that has led to the UK getting a better shake, if you will, than many other allies and many other countries as well. But the unpredictability of the Trump tariff plan certainly has been something that has sort of been off-putting to many countries and world leaders. That has really defined the first 6 months of the Trump administration. So we will see if there's any resolution or production here. Again, this trip was intended to be about golf, not necessarily about business, but the trade deadlines have added on to it. There's going to be a second state visit that President Trump will be returning to the United Kingdom in September for a formal state visit at Windsor. The King invited the U.S. president back for a state visit, which is pretty rare. I mean, Donald Trump had an official, formal, ceremonial state visit with Queen Elizabeth back during his first years in office, and to have him come back to do it with King Charles is certainly extraordinary. So this meeting and this visit is something of a prelude to that, which is coming in September.
And of course, he leaves the US with the Epstein files and the questions surrounding that hanging over his head. We know for the second day, the US Deputy Attorney General has been questioning Ghislaine Maxwell, who is, of course, a convicted sex trafficker. In terms of whether or not he will pardon her, that certainly was a question that he was asked, and he said that he does indeed have the ability to do that should he choose. Jeff, I mean, why would he do that, and what sort of risk does that carry if he even considers that?
Look, that was an interesting and important question that was asked, and the president noting that he does have the power to do so. Of course, the Jeffrey Epstein scandal has been hanging over this administration for several weeks, largely of their own making, because they, of course, were raising questions about conspiracy theories and the like for the better part of a decade with the disgraced financier Jeffrey Epstein, who was a longtime former friend of the president's. But the pardon specifically, whether the president would or would not pardon Ghislaine Maxwell, that became important because, again, as you said, she had a meeting today for the second day in a row with the Deputy Attorney General of the United States. That shows just how high of a ranking priority this is for this president and this administration to try and get something from her. So that is why a pardon discussion is relevant here. We will see if the president does that. But one thing being here now, landing in Scotland, the White House and the president certainly hoping that they can put the questions of the Jeffrey Epstein matter behind them, leave them in Washington. We will see if that happens, because every single day there have been new developments, and this White House has struggled to get through this political crisis.
Yeah, and it's interesting, particularly with this crisis, that it's not so much a one-sided political attack. People in Trump's own base want more information about who is in the Epstein files. How unusual is it that you're seeing this sort of scrutiny from some of Trump's most staunchest supporters, really?
It's very unusual. I mean, we have seen Republicans in the House of Representatives in Congress voting to subpoena documents, effectively going against the wishes of their party. This is really one of the rare examples of something where it actually has divided the party. And the reason for that is again, the better part of a decade, many of President Trump's early supporters, some of his loudest supporters, have been raising questions about what they believe is a conspiracy theory about the Jeffrey Epstein case, that there were people who were being protected by this, by the Biden administration, even the Obama administration going way back. Well, when the Trump administration is now in charge, Republicans have been left sort of flat-footed and empty-handed in terms of getting some of these answers. So even as the president and the White House have tried to tamp this down and move on, that has not been enough for some of their supporters, because they've been led to believe that there is more there. And it's unclear if there actually is more there or not. It is unclear if there actually is any type of a conspiracy. We do know that President Trump had a long-standing relationship with Jeffrey Epstein from the late 80s until 2004, when they had a falling out. We have learned that the extent of their friendship was quite close. But the president is mentioned in some of these files, but that the context is unclear. And he, of course, has not been accused or suggested of any wrongdoing. Jeffrey Epstein had many friends, but that is why it's dividing the Republican Party, because some of the president's own supporters want more answers to this. So it's one of the burdens of being in power, positions of power. You actually have to make these decisions here, and the Trump administration has been flat-footed on many of them.
And just for our viewers, we just saw the US President Donald Trump touching down there in Glasgow, Scotland, as part of a 4-day trip, where he's going to be opening a new golf course and also meeting with the British Prime Minister Keir Starmer to discuss trade and, of course, the situation in Gaza. Our Jeff Zeleny is standing by for us right now. It looks like Donald Trump may be taking some questions. Let's listen in.
We'll be meeting with the Prime Minister,
Great.
I guess tomorrow, a little bit tomorrow and the next day. And we're going to do some great things. Do you have any questions? What? Yes, I'll be meeting with the EU on Sunday, and we'll be working on a deal. We'll see if we make a deal. Ursula will be here, highly respected woman, so we look forward to that. That'll be good. We'll have numerous executives that we're meeting with. We're going to be meeting with a lot of people. A lot of people will be staying at Turnberry, and then we're going to Aberdeen, which is the oil capital of Europe, actually.
Mr. President, can you explain what is missing in the UK deal that you have to work out?
Nothing. We I think it's more of a celebration than a workout. It's a great deal for both, and we're going to have a meeting on other things other than the deal. The deal is concluded.
So Western comment.
Well, that's what he does. I mean, you know, that's fine if he does that. That's up to him. It's not up to me. I'm with the United States. I'm not with France.
And the humanitarian situation in Gaza, we hear very dire warnings about.
I think it's terrible what happened with Hamas. They tapped everybody along, and we'll see what happens. We'll see what response Israel has to that. But it's getting to be that time.
Are you concerned about the images? There's a 50-50 chance of a deal. What is left to work out? What are the final sticking points?
I don't know. With the European Union, I think we have a good 50-50 chance. That's a lot.
What are the sticking points? That you
Well, I don't want to tell you what the sticking points are, but the sticking points are having to do with maybe 20 different things. You don't want to listen to all of them. Yes.
What advice are you going to have for our Prime Minister about free speech? It's very important to people here.
Well, it is, but I like your Prime Minister. He's slightly more liberal than I am, as you've probably heard, but he's a good man. He got a trade deal done. And, you know, they've been working on this deal for 12 years. He got it done. It's a good deal. It's a good deal for the UK. So, no, I'll be seeing him tomorrow, I guess, tomorrow evening. And this is our wonderful ambassador, as you know. He's doing a good job. He's a very, very successful man. He'll be doing a good job.
The Royal N18 says you're going to have to improve infrastructure at Turnberry to bring the Open back. Is that something you're going to
I don't know. The best course anywhere in the world is Turnberry. The players all want to be at Turnberry. Everybody wants to be at Turnberry, so we'll see how that works out.
The infrastructure needs to be.
Oh, I think the infrastructure in the course is good. In fact, the Royal N18, I don't know if you're aware of this, they spent a lot of money, hundreds of thousands of dollars, or probably into the millions of dollars, and they've laid all the wire for television and for electricity under the holes of Turnberry, so that when the Open gets there, they have it all done. They paid for that.
But we're talking about roads and railway stations.
Well, I don't know. See, I don't know what you can do. All I can tell you is that it would be the best place anywhere in your country to have. There's no place like it. There's no place like Turnberry. It's the best, probably the best course in the world. And I would say Aberdeen is right up there also. Aberdeen's great. And while we're here, I'll be with my son, and he's going to cut a ribbon for the second course at Aberdeen, which is just about equal to the first. I mean, it's going to be a battle. You know, it's, as you know, they're very highly rated. And the second course is great. Sean Connery helped get me the permits. If it weren't for Sean Connery, we wouldn't have those great courses. No, I was never briefed, no.
Did you ask how?
What are you hoping Todd Blanche interviewing Ghislaine Maxwell? What are you hoping that they get out of that?
I really have really nothing to say about it. She is being talked to by a very smart man, by a very good man, Todd Blanche. And I don't know anything about the conversation. I haven't really been following it. A lot of people are asking me about pardons. Obviously, this is no time to be talking about pardons. But a lot of people have asked about pardon. This is just not a time to be talking about pardons. Todd will come back with whatever he's got. You're making a very big thing over something that's not a big thing. You should be talking about, if you're going to talk about that, talk about Clinton, talk about the former president of Harvard, talk about all of his friends, talk about the hedge fund guys that were with him all the time. Don't talk about Trump. What you should be talking about is the fact that we have the greatest 6 months in the history of a presidency, according to a lot of people. And we had an amazing 6 months. And this is sort of an example of it. Now we're meeting with the European Union, we're also meeting with, as you know, the head of UK, Prime Minister, and I look forward to that. But we're meeting, in terms of a deal, we're meeting with the European Union, and that would be actually the biggest deal of them all if we make it.
Did you ask House Republican leaders to not vote on the resolution about releasing the files?
I was never involved in that. I'm focused on making deals. I'm not focused on conspiracy theories that you are. I mean, I watch you people. It's so sad. You ought to talk about the success of our country instead of this nonsense that you talk about over and over again.
You've done an amazing job on illegal migration in America. A lot
I have.
of people here are very worried about the situation, record numbers.
Well, I say two things to Europe. Stop the windmills. You're ruining your countries. I really mean it. It's so sad. You fly over and you see these windmills all over the place, ruining your beautiful fields and valleys and killing your birds. And if they're stuck in the ocean, ruining your oceans. Stop the windmills. And there's a couple of things I could say, but on immigration, you better get your act together. You're not going to have Europe anymore. You got to get your act together. And we, as you know, last month we had nobody entering our country. Nobody. Shut it down. And we took out a lot of bad people that got there with Biden. Biden was a total stiff. And what he allowed to happen, but you're allowing it to happen to your countries. And you got to stop this horrible invasion that's happening to Europe. Many countries in Europe. Some people, some leaders have not let it happen. And they're not getting the proper credit they should. I could name them to you right now, but I'm not going to embarrass the other ones. But stop. This immigration is killing Europe. And the other thing, stop the windmills, killing the beauty of your countries. Thank you very much, everybody.
You've just been listening there to the US President Donald Trump, who has touched down in Glasgow, where he will be spending the next few days there on what is both a personal trip, a business trip, plus a political trip where he'll be meeting with both the UK Prime Minister, the British Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, to discuss trade and the war in Gaza. And he'll also be meeting with EU leaders to discuss a trade deal. He said there's a 50-50 chance that it will happen, but he also said there are about 20 different sticking points that remain. And he spoke, of course, about what he's there to do with his golf courses at Aberdeen and Turnberry. Kevin Liptak is standing by, who just also listened in. This is an interesting trip because it really does blur the lines between politics and personal promotion of businesses. There, we just heard Donald Trump talking about his golf courses being the best in the world, at the same time discussing trade deals and international wars. What stood out to you?
Yeah, and just for some context, the basis of what the president was saying there about Turnberry being the best course in the world, he was asked whether the Royal and Ancient, which is the organization that runs the British Open, would eventually award the yearly tournament to Turnberry, the course on the west coast of Scotland. It's in the rotation for the British Open, but it hasn't been held there since 2009. The RNA says that there aren't enough hotel rooms there, that the rail infrastructure isn't robust enough. And the president, on the one hand, says that he isn't really thinking about that too much, but then went into that sort of lengthy answer describing Turnberry as one of the best courses in the world, and then also describing his clubs on the other side of Scotland in Aberdeenshire as also the best in the world, and this new course that he'll cut the ribbon on Tuesday is perhaps competing in that. So you do see the president there promoting his own businesses at the end of the day. You know, we kind of have lost sight of the president's conflicts of interest sometimes. In a lot of ways, they seem quaint given everything else that the president is doing that is controversial, but this is just evident that it does remain something of an issue, and that's exactly what he's doing in Scotland this weekend, is sort of attending to those courses. You know, you heard him talk about the EU, and he did confirm that he'll meet the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen on Sunday evening, saying that he thinks that there's about a 50-50 chance that they strike a deal, and describing this prospective trade agreement as the big one, you know, bigger than all of these other ones that he has so far negotiated. But then you heard him go on this kind of lengthy screed about non-trade related issues in the European Union, whether it's immigration, which is obviously one of his biggest domestic political issues, whether it's windmills, that has been sort of a constant criticism of his, particularly actually when it comes to Scotland. Obviously, Scotland is not in the EU, but he has criticized Scotland's use of windmills, which he says sort of destroys the view from some of these golf courses that he owns. So quite a lengthy sort of screed on that. And then, of course, he's asked about the Epstein matter, repeating some of what he said earlier today, saying that now is not the time to talk about a pardon for Ghislaine Maxwell, suggesting that this is all kind of a distraction from the most important business that he's focused on, and criticizing the media from being focused on a conspiracy, although we should note that the conspiracy was ginned up by some of the president's own supporters, some of whom are now serving in his administration. That's sort of why this is in the spotlight right now, but the president clearly just trying to move on from that.
Yeah. Hey, it was certainly a lot to break down in terms of what he went through. In terms of the Ghislaine Maxwell and the Epstein files, he did, for the first time then, just say, I've been asked about a pardon. It's not the time to talk about that right now. And he sort of almost tried to shut down some of that discussion, saying nothing to say about it. But certainly he did talk about the U.S. Deputy Attorney as being a very smart man who, of course, was his former personal attorney, right?
Yeah, exactly right. His answer here, I think, is trying to tamp it down. When I asked Trump about the pardons earlier today when he was leaving the White House, he said he hadn't thought about it, but the most important thing that he said in that answer was that he had the power to do it. That answer actually caught the attention of Ghislaine Maxwell's attorney, who is down in Florida with her today, saying that they had heard what the president said there, and that they were still, hoping that he would exercise that power to the extent of his ability, not necessarily saying explicitly that she wanted a pardon, but making very clear that they heard what the president said and making clear that that is something that they will be sort of tracking going forward. And so, the question of the pardon is important because as Ghislaine Maxwell sits down there with Todd Blanche, the question is what she is trying to get out of it. She's been appealing her sentence. She maintains her innocence, and there's sort of a thought that she's not going to talk to Todd Blanche and give him all the information that he wants if she is not getting something herself in return. She's already been convicted, so a plea agreement is not on the table. What does seem to be on the table is some of these powers of presidential clemency, whether it's a pardon or a commutation that would allow her to leave prison early. That in itself, I think, raises some questions about her own credibility. If she thinks that a pardon is on the table here, how can you necessarily trust what she's saying is to be true? She's clearly trying to get something out of it. And the president's answer to that is that he's known Todd Blanche for a long time, that Todd Blanche has been in some of these situations before, and that he trusts him to sort of ascertain her trustworthiness in all of this.
Yeah, exactly. But certainly a lot of questions around her credibility and to your point, what she'll get out of this in potentially answering some of these questions in the way she determines is the right way to answer them. Jeff Zeleny, certainly a lot of questions about that, but we are going to cover this at the top of the hour. Thanks so much, Jeff Zeleny, outside the White House. I'm Linda Kincaid. This is What We Know.